So the simplest way to test your code is to just, run it multiple times and see if you get the results that you expect to get. For instance, here in this code, I've got a couple of functions that calculate area and calculate circumference. And, I could go ahead and write myself, let's see, I got to define it, def main. And in here, I could do things like print the result for calc sir circumf, with 25 and maybe do it with a bunch of different values and then actually have those values pre-calculated and see if my program is getting what I expect it to get. I can also add in debugging print statements anywhere inside of my code, and hopefully you've been doing a lot of this already. However, Python gives us a more robust way to test our code, especially to test our functions, that our functions are returning the values that we expect them to test. And they do this with a built-in unit test module as a unit testing framework that you can import and use to test your functions. It's a little bit complex to use because it requires, so here's something I wrote up. So this is my code for the unit testing. So I import unit test. I wrote this simple program here that has functions that I might want to test, and it is called a simple calc. So I just have four, simple functions in here, and I kind of made this little test template to test my functions. And so I import unit test. That's the built-in library with Python that provides the functionality for me to test my functions. And then I'm also importing the program that I created that has the functions I want to test. You won't be doing a lot of this. I'm gonna put the template up, and you're welcome to use the template where all you have to do is change the code you want to import, and then change this test here. You can add more tests, but you keep this part all the same. This is in order to use the unit test module. I actually have to create a class that inherits the unit test case class as a little bit beyond the scope of this class. We're not doing object-oriented programming. Turtle uses some classes behind the scenes. We don't, we use objects in terms of Turtle, so we are using classes, but we're not going to be writing our own classes much in this course. So this code down here really just tests and makes sure that we're running this itself rather than as a part of another module. That's really oversimplified. But if you just take this template and you change the file that you want to import, and you can add more tests, change the tests to be able to test your functions, then you can go ahead and use unit testing. So in this case, I just created a name. I called it the test add because I'm testing the add function. It always has to take itself. That has to do with how Python classes work. And then I'm going to use this method on self called assert equal. Then I'm going to call on simple calc, that is the name of my module, simple calc dot add. Add is the name of my function. And if I send it, these two numbers, 3 and 4, what I expect to get is 7. So this is the first parameter that I'm sending to assert equal, and this is the second. And both, if these are the equal, I'm asserting that they're equal. If the simple calc add function, when I send it 3 and 4, returns the same value that is the second parameter, in which case is 7, then it's going to pass the test. So when I run this, it's going to say ran one test in 0.008 seconds, and it's okay. So in this case, it passed the test. The main reason why I'm showing this, besides giving you a taste of unit testing and the way that unit testing works in Python, is this will help you understand a little bit more how Replit works, because within Replit, we use unit testing. As soon as we got to functions, all of your practice assignments use unit tests. So for example, in this assignment, so functions 1, where we're going going to make a function that is going to convert cups to ounces. It's going to take a number of cups as a parameter. It's going to convert it to ounces and then return those ounces. We're actually using unit tests to test that. So this is what tells you whether or not you got it correct. So in this case, it sets up the import for us. You can see here that our class unit test is inheriting our unit test.test case class, and then this is the name of our test right here. So test C to ounces. We just named it that. We could have called it whatever we wanted. We added in some comments, and we're using assert equals in all of our tests within this test. So we have 3 tests within our test function, and we're going to say that when the function is run with 2.5 cups, it should return 20 ounces. When the function is run with 1 cup, it should return 8 ounces. When the function is run with 3 cups, it should return 24 ounces. It must pass all 3 of these tests for you to get credit for the program. And so we use these pretty much in just about all of your practice problems from now on. When you're writing functions, the way we test whether or not your code is written correctly is whether or not it passes a number of different tests within the unit test framework. So hopefully not only do you see a kind of powerful tool, the unit test framework within Python that you could use to test your functions, but you also see how your Replit practice assignments are going to be scored starting with functions, or were scored starting with functions, and it will help you kind of debug when you're not able to get your Replit code to run. So as always, let me know if you have any questions, and happy programming.